all aware, Kyiv champions and the largest
last
city
year when we
in
got to
Eastern
Kyiv,
Europe with a population
the
of
war started on the
about
24th of
3.5
February.
million people.
A week before that,
It's a
the India Today
historic
team,
city.
as you all well
Russia,
know, Aaj Tak, we take
feels
great pride in saying, "Hum
very
sabse
close
tez
to
hai." We were the first
Ukraine
channel to
culturally.
get,
Once a part of the Soviet Union
and
but,
report from
when
Kyiv. But
we
we're
got
hoping
there
to
at the time, when the
where
conflict had
Vitali
actually
Klitschko
started.
as
There
you
were
all know,
troops
is the
who
man
were going to the
if
front lines.
missiles would be
As you're all
fired,
aware,
Kyiv
champions
and
the largest
last
city
year when
in
we got to
Eastern
Kyiv,
Europe
19th to
with
the
a
24th, we were still waiting, wondering what will happen. Will negotiations work? Anyway, they say until the first bullet is fired, people hope that diplomacy will succeed, people will negotiate, and an effort will be made to ensure that the war doesn't actually happen. But it did. Missiles were fired and Kyiv was targeted. There was a multi-pronged offensive where the Russian forces, they came in from the north, from Belarus. They came in from multiple sides and they tried to take Kyiv. There was this big siege. Vitali Klitschko was the mayor even then. Come, Preeti. And
you know what I'm going to do is we're going to just play out a quick AV for those of you, I'm sure there are very few, who haven't seen Gaurav's own reportage during the Ukraine crisis. So we're going to just play it out and then Gaurav will take it over. Let's try and keep it interactive. We have 10 good minutes. Throw us your questions. I'm sure Gaurav will be more than happy to take some of them. And then we go back into the Darbar Hall. But let's look at, you know, we call him General Sawant in our studios. But let's look at Gaurav Sawant's reportage from Kyiv.
Hear the song. India's most watched war reporter. You can hear more blasts that are taking place. We are moving away from this area. We're being told to leave this area because it's not safe to be here. Here's reports on every Indian front. Reports from amidst shelling and strikes. The only reporter in the true war zone. Gaurav Sawant is back on assignment. Across Poland and Ukraine, he's on duty.
As the world marks a month of this war, Gaurav Sawant keeps you posted.
these are anti-tank mines.
The Ukraine reporter every Indian is watching. India Today, no compromise.
All right, so this was Gaurav's reportage. It's been a full year since the Ukraine war, Gaurav. You know, we're very sorry that our guest, the mayor of Kyiv, Mr. Vitali Klitschko, wasn't here. But what have been your endearing images of the war?
The way the people fought. You know, I've covered the Kargil war and there are several generals here. General Joshi is here. He was in the Kargil war. There are several other generals who are here. I've seen our soldiers fight right on the front lines. The way they took Tiger Hill, the way they took Tololing. I've actually similarly seen Ukrainian soldiers fight. The difference between Ukraine and what we saw here was citizen soldiers in Ukraine, Preeti, a very large number of civilians. They may be software engineers, they may be school teachers, drivers, nurses, doctors. They were all at the front line with their weapons, with very basic training. In some instances, just 10 days of weapons training, and they were right there at the front lines, and the front lines kept changing. Very, very fluid front lines. Again, when we were in a place like Mariupol, which was very extensively shelled, those areas, Preeti, you had more civilians defending it than frontline soldiers who were actually trying to defend their borders and not the second line of defense.
You know, it's as close possibly that we've seen war, you know, in a foreign country, Gaurav, through some of our reporters who were there. I'm sure we'll be joined by my colleague Geeta as well soon. But for those of you who have any questions for Gaurav that you want to ask, he spent a sizable time in Ukraine. You know, we can make this session, only this session, a little interactive. We have 10 minutes. But shoot on. Does anybody have any questions for Gaurav? There. Ma'am, go ahead.
Go on, ma'am. We'll try and get a mic to you immediately. Just give us a moment. We'll try and get a mic to you. Ma'am, we're just getting a mic to you.
Everyone has their own agenda, as we common people are made to understand. that it's these countries that are just trying to sell their weapons and they want the war to carry on. What's your take on it?
Ma'am, right now, again, what perspective are we looking at? The Ukrainian perspective is that they're fighting for their security, they're fighting for their motherland. And I've seen that on ground. They are fighting to ensure that the Russians don't take over Kyiv. But is this a fight that the Americans are selling a lot of their military hardware? The industrial complex is making a lot of money, and there is no denying the fact, even as we speak right now. Why is it that the Ukrainians are very busy? There is a massive offensive that's about to start. It's called the Spring Offensive. This is where Ukraine also intends to take the battle into the Russian-held territory. So what they're trying to get is, while the Americans are giving them the Patriot missiles, they're trying to get the Bradley fighting vehicle, the Stryker fighting vehicles. These are the armored personal carriers to take your troops forward. They're trying to get the Leopard tanks, the Challenger tanks, the M1 Abrams. So you're right, it's all about weapons. It's also a lot about ammunition. There are so many generals sitting here. They'll tell you, you can fight a war, you need weapons and you need numbers. Numbers to last the war a period. Who would have thought that this war would last 1 year and longer? It's actually becoming an endless war. The tragedy for Ukraine right now is the West is giving them weapons to stay in the fight. They're not giving them weapons to win the fight. So they'll stay in the fight, perhaps endlessly, or till the time the Russian industrial complex, military industrial complex, is unable to service the Russians, ma'am. So this is actually becoming an endless war. The preparation right now, and I've been speaking to a number of officers in the Ukrainian army and other analysts in Ukraine, they say they are trying to get numbers right now, get enough to last them through the summers, push the Russians back as much as they can, whether it's on the multipolar axis. So there are two axes on which they can go. One is go south, one is go east, and regain some of their lost territory. That's their strategy. Will it work? We really don't know, because the casualties are massive. More than 2 lakh soldiers on either side have been killed and injured. So the casualties, can you imagine? 2 lakh people dying in under 1 year in war. It's one of the worst wars that's being fought right now in Europe.
Two questions. One is, the footage that you showed, is it all your footage that was live shot by you and your team?
Most of it. Most of it. But then there were also agency cameras, locals who were shooting it while it was happening, and then, on their mobile phones. Now, a lot of information comes through images that have been taken on mobile phone then and there and circulated.
Right. My second question was really that, do you see it being ratcheted up? You're seeing slowly the more and more sophisticated weapons coming, the Leopard tanks, the M1 Abrams, stuff like that coming in. So the next level could be aircraft, and do you not see that as an escalation?
The Ukrainians are desperate for the fighter jets. In fact, you have a large number of Ukrainian fighter pilots currently undergoing training in the UK, in parts of Europe, and some even in the United States of America. But what fighter jets? They've all been trained on the MiG-29s, all on the Soviet origin Russian aircraft. Will they fly the F-16s? Clearly not right now. President Zelensky is very keen he gets the F-16s. His point is, if you give me the F-16s, I'll take this fight into the Russian camp. But the Americans are not giving him the F-16s. When you talk to any Ukrainian officer, any Ukrainian political leader, member of parliament, they say, give us longer range weapons, we'll take this fight and we'll regain the territory lost in Donbass region. We'll retake even Crimea. They want to retake Crimea. Can that actually happen? So the Americans are, from behind the scenes, directing this war in a certain way. The Ukrainians are fighting it in a certain way. What's very interesting is, even when we were on ground, on now, you have two sets of officers or soldiers fighting this battle. Those who've been trained in the Soviet era, those who fight the battle like the Russians, and those who've been trained by the NATO forces post-2014, much smaller units, more agile, able to hit behind enemy lines, and there's often a clash between these two on how to take this battle forward.
Thank you.
How much influence do you think the Chinese aid to Russia would have on this war?
Sir, that actually will be a game changer either side should that happen. There are reports that the Chinese President Xi Jinping will be meeting the Russian President President Putin and then also interact with President Zelensky. Now, will that bring peace or will that bring weapons and systems to Russia to prolong this conflict? And then you have the world very clearly divided between Russia, China on one side and the Americans and NATO forces on the other side. Now, should that happen, this war will go on for a very, very long time, sir. Because if India were to perhaps play a role, India, when you speak to Ukrainians, they say that we would trust the Indians. As far as the Chinese are concerned, they are much closer to the Russians. Everyone knows that no limits partnership that they've spoken of, sir.
Well, thank you, Gaurav. And we are sorry, but I'm glad, Gaurav could throw some light on the ongoing Ukraine war. But sorry that our guest couldn't make it, but there was an ongoing war and he had to actually go and meet the president, so it was a last-minute thing. May I request you all to please kindly make your way back to the Darbar Hall. The sanitization for the Home Minister's visit is over. Our next session, in the next 10 minutes, we commence from the Darbar Hall. The Darbar Hall, ladies and gentlemen, is the same hall where we've been conducting our sessions through the course of the day. So please make your way back to the Darbar Hall.